This is brought to you by Cricket 8. They are a new player in the game trying to educate fans on what is really happening in cricket. We have a partnership with them where we host live watch-alongs, do podcasts, and write articles. If you want to know what is really happening with our game, visit cricket8.com. If you make any content, Minvo Pro is the tool for you. Take your long format content and cut it and slice it for social media. This AI-inspired weapon will turn your one piece of work into so many clips. Try Minvo.pro now. Morning everyone and welcome to the Scoreboard. I am Jared Kimber and to be honest, I don't know about CSK's batting. There's a couple of times recently where I've just not really felt it. You know what I mean? Like, you look at it and you go, but they're a better team than the opposition, but how are they going to beat the opposition? And I don't know, there's a Conway-sized hole at the top. Mitchell and Ravinder both look out of form. Maybe they're going to have to try Mitchell opening up as well. But probably one of them needs to fix this. And it just feels like there is a lot of talent there, but that it's not quite coming together. It needs a glue guy to make it all work, a banker. And this innings just felt stale all the way through. Like, I couldn't work out what their advantage was over LSG until what? The death? And, you know, maybe they should just send MS Dhoni out all the time and tell him he's batting at the death. I'm not sure about the idea of batting Jadeja up that high. On LSG's side in that first innings, I thought Matt Henry is a very nice addition. I don't think he helps all that much with the death, but you partner him with their spinners, and that first, 14 over period is quite dangerous in a couple of different ways. Also, is it just me? Has Krunal not earned the fourth over of his spell the way he's been bowling of recent times? But yeah, essentially, when I look at this innings, it looked like to me CSK had too many players not quite in form. And honestly, I would have been more than okay if we just simulated the innings until MS Dhoni came out. Which, to be fair, by the look of the crowd so far, I would have to say most people would agree with me there. After the break, Chahar bowled a great over. And then from the second over onwards, they went with cutters. Why so many cutters? What's the deal with cutters? Why do we just need to keep bowling cutters? The ball was seaming and swinging. Why are you bowling cutters? Why not try a spinner as well? If you think that cutters is the most important thing, spinner? An off spinner against QDK? And instead, no, they just finished the power play with the match almost over. And by that point, Partharana was of little use to them, right? Because LSG didn't have to slog anymore. KL and QDK probably let the chase get too close. And close is the wrong word, right? But you know what I mean? Like, Puran being in world-class form was pretty handy at the end. I suppose what I'm really saying is that they could have ended the game so early on, and instead they played with their food a little bit, ensuring that they missed out on what they probably deserved in a game like this, which was a huge net run rate boost. And they don't have a great net run rate, you know what I mean? But I don't know. CSK's format is all over the shop. And as for LSG, this is their biggest win so far this season. So congratulations. Let us have a look at the scoreboard part of the show. Remember, if you want to ask questions, Super Chat's the best way to go. Someone's already in the Super Chat, so thank you. But any comments, I don't think this is the most exciting game in the world, so feel free to ask as many questions as possible. I've already seen a couple of good ones in there as well, but let's get to the scoreboard. Actually, that would work better if I actually clicked on the scoreboard, wouldn't it? KL Roll and Quinton de Kock by phase today. So KL Roll had a strike rate of 170 early on. I thought this was magnificent. I love the way he went about it. And he kept that up in the middle overs. That's the bit that KL Roll can really, really struggle in. It's not usually that quick either, but I really like this. This is the bit where I thought they played with their food a little bit. But QDK never really got going, right? There was a big part, must have been around the, 9, 10, 11, maybe even into the 12, 13, 14. I can't remember when he went out. But there was this big period where I was like, is he trying to get out? Is his main shot here a shot that will remove him from the crease? He didn't quite look right, but KL was completely on top and then just eventually resorted to type for no real reason. This is his strike rate in the power play since 2016. So we can see 2018. That was the KL rule I fell in love with. But the rest of these, they're not for me. This is when I broke up with him. Yeah, it hasn't been great. So you can see so far we're on track for something around there. I still think if we go back to that, if we go back here, this sort of stuff He doesn't really need to do that. But this is a very good sign. He's only really had, what's that one, 140? Yeah, so we'll give, if we say 135, this is only his third season ever with a strike rate over 135 in the power play. You know, we've done the true economy on how he goes through the innings. We all know about this, but this is quite obvious. So that looks intentional. How much of this is he trusts his batting a little bit more? I don't know if the batting's that great, but at least per runs behind him. Or how much of this is he realizes he's not getting back in the Indian side without playing in this kind of way? I don't know. He might not get back in the Indian side either way, but it's worth hoping, right? This is his strike rate against spin and pace since 2016. So you can see here, this is quite interesting. Usually players would stay on one side of this line or the other. And you can see here that in 2016, he's striking at 154 against pace, right? And then that stays there. But that 2018, which is the magical season for him, really, he's over 150 against both. This is the reason that I was so annoyed that he became an anchor. And it's because there aren't that many players who can strike at 150 plus against both and make runs, right? Like, there are some players who do that who face like 15 balls a game, but be able to do that and face 25 or 35 balls a game is incredible. But you could see where the issue is. It really has been spin ever since. He's just got a lot more defensive against spin, but he's back up here with a really good record against pace again. Some of this can be that when he bats longer, he gets back in against pace, but you could see from this, pace is not the issue. Right, clearly spin is the issue here, and he's been really, really slow against it. You know, in some of these years, just unnecessarily slow. And this year, he's at 126. I would like that. If we could have a gentleman's agreement with me and Rahul, I'd say 135. Can you give me 135 against spin? And he would say, how am I supposed to work out that mathematics when I'm on the field? It's not likely, is it? This is the Kock's true values by phase for LSG. He's a fascinating player, Quinton de Kock, because he's obviously very, very good, and he can be great at Test cricket and and one-day cricket he was fantastic. T20 cricket he does kind of verge more towards the decent but not brilliant. But in the power play, I do think that is when he has his best use. And if you go back to the Mumbai days, I always thought the same thing of. He was maximizing the 6 over par, where you weren't losing any extra wickets and you were always scoring above par. He wasn't fantastic. He wasn't changing the game for you, but he meant, especially with a team that was very middle order dependent, he was very good. His issue really is when the spin starts to come on and the field goes out. He likes to be able to improvise when the field is up. So if the seamers get him down, he'll start playing those lap shots. I don't think he plays them particularly well, if we're being honest, but he knows he only needs to hit 1 or 2 for 6, and that stuffs up everyone's plan. But you can see here, his true strike rate in the power play is, plus 12, basically, which is more than fine, and he's giving you extra runs. Down here is the bigger issue. So from 7 to 12, you can see that he's still striking at a slightly quicker rate. In fact, he's always above the true strike rate, so we're happy with that. But you can see that his true average has dropped down a little bit. When paired with this, I don't mind that too much. But if you're going to go out anyway, I would rather him go out with a bit more of a bang. So I would probably rather if that number was over here, or even slightly lower, so that he had a big true strike rate and he's going out, but he's having like a Travis Head-like impact. Because the thing is that Quinton de Kock is not quite the same kind of player as Travis Head, but he does have the ability to score. He's one of the fastest scoring test players of all time. He can score very quickly, and people are petrified of him. You're not petrified of that. And this is the other thing that I think is really interesting. He's picked up his true strike rate a little bit here to plus 10. But if he's in between overs 12 and 16, he's completely set. I think it is a little bit that when he tries to play spin, he goes for big shots and he gets a little bit mechanic. He doesn't become a mechanic. He might get grease on his hands. He gets a little bit mechanical. And there's a couple of times with some of the shots he played today where you saw that same kind of thing of, I kind of wish he had more options available to him. Or when he gets down for the slog sweep, when he realizes it's not there, play a normal sweep or something else. There's something not quite right about the way he attacks against spin. I did like, I can't remember if it was if it was Moeen Ali or Jadeja, but I think it was Moeen Ali that he went straight with today. Having that extra option, I think, again, would help with that. But really good innings from him, and obviously they won the game. I was going to say no notes, but I just gave you so many notes. There's so many. Ajinkya Rahane versus pace and spin in the IPL in 2023 and then 2024. Jinx. So last year against pace, he was scoring at 2 runs a ball and well over 2 runs a ball. That probably wasn't sustainable, and I think we're all fine with that. But to go from that to 147 is a drop. But if he's striking at 147 against pace, I don't think it would be an issue. The problem is that last year, there's that 135 that I was talking about from KL Rahul. Last year, that 135 mark against spin, if he had 135 and 147, he's a plus player. He's not the impact that he had last year, but he's a plus player. The issue is that at the moment he's scoring out less than a run ball against spin. And the only way to keep that as a fine number is to go back up here. And it's a huge issue. And I wonder now if last year no one was really fearing Ajinkya Rahane because, he hadn't had a good year in quite some time and everyone thought he was finished. Maybe it took a little bit longer for everyone to work out, well, let's just bowl spin to him when he's in. And this year they're like, well, no, let's plan for him. I don't know. It could just be, the fact that he's gone down with both might just be he's not seeing the ball as well as he saw it last year. These things happen. This is Rahane's true values versus pace and spin in 2023 versus 2024. So he was plus 64 on strike rate in that time, 165 runs. So it wasn't that it was fed to him all that much. How many? He's faced 93 runs. So yeah, it wasn't that at all. He just smashed it every time he faced it. But true average of plus 30. That's magnificent, obviously. So this is this year at the moment. He's slightly down on true strike rate, but he's a long way down on true average. He hasn't really looked like he's had the same intent either. So it's not like he's putting pressure back on and teams are lucky to get him out. It feels like he's just a little bit stuck. This is him against spin last year. So you can see slightly down on true average, but striking up. And for a player like him, because of this, I'm not massively worried about those numbers at all. Whereas this, he's 42 behind on true strike rate. And he's almost making it worse by not being dismissed by spin all that much. You've got to trade some of that in. You've got to have a negative true average and try and get close to a past true strike rate. Again, it could have just been that everything went right for him last year, but he doesn't seem to be playing in the same way. I think this shows that. Where are we? Okay. Jadeja's strike rate in 5-ball intervals today. Started off okay, dropped down a little bit, got back up fine. It's a fairly, this is the only bit that you would have a genuine argument with. And it's funny. I've watched Jadeja come up the order and Sam Curran. The problem with those two guys is they are both very, very talented, but they're very, very limited in their talents. And that's why Jadeja is not a top order batter in international cricket. And it's why he bats more like a great number 7 rather than a number 4, even an average number 4. And that doesn't mean he won't make more runs than other number 4s. What it means is his options are quite limited to him. And if you send him up like you do today, there is a chance of him getting stuck. This is probably the moment that you would have your issue with him. Other than that, I suppose at the 25 ball mark, it's not great. But I don't think it's a horrendous innings. But I reckon if you looked, I think Sam Curran would have some similar kind of patterns to this. That there are just times that you can work out how to limit their effectiveness. And they're both very good at staying in for, a decent amount of time. Certainly Jadeja more so than Curran. And so there is a danger in certain innings of them not getting ahead. Curran seems to have more power at the end to be able to slog, whereas Jadeja, it seems to have almost completely fallen away from him. This is Jadeja facing 25 balls in an IPL match. So we've got here strike rate and runs. And I think this is a really interesting way of looking at this, because it shows that there aren't many times when he gets to that sort of limit. So if you have a look, when he plays these long innings, this is kind of what I'm talking about. It's the getting stuck and never being able to kick on the way that a batter would. And the interesting thing about that is we have had a couple of years where he's managed to be very good at the death, but those have been years when he's been saved for the death, and he doesn't look like that player anymore, right? But you look at this, and these longer innings, they quite often are recovery innings, or he sent up the order because something's not working particularly well, which is absolutely fine. But I mean, we understand that these ones around here are the ones I would definitely be thinking for that. But once you get in past 40, 45, 50 and everything else, there should be more innings that have kicked on where he's really gone. At the very least, what's this? 169. So he's got 3 innings of over 25 balls where he struck at over 150. Now, I think this is where CSK's role definition comes back to bite them, because I think they've sent him in at times with a clear role. And it seems to me that Jadeja is the sort of player that if you say it is your job to cut up the oranges and make sure there is petrol in the tank, those are the only 2 things he's going to do on that day. And so I wonder if that is also a bit of an issue for him. But there's so many innings here where he's been in for a long time and he hasn't kicked on. It is, I think a part of it has to be his limitations and not just everything else. But the one advantage I would say of having a player like this is you have a player who can moonlight as a top order player, right? You compare that to the Sam Curran thing, where it's like Sam Curran can pretend he's a top order player, and it's going to happen occasionally, but he's probably not going to average 30 or 35 doing it, right? Whereas Jadeja probably could, but in order to get that, you have to have the fact he's going to do it with his own method at times. This is Krunal's true economy at the for each over. Now, I point this out in part because he didn't bowl his 4 overs today. But also, it's very interesting that he starts off as a very par level bowler, and just below, really, because par would be up here. And the further he bowls into the innings, the better he is. How much of this is because he hasn't always been an automatic 4 over bowler, and the days that he does bowl is when the pitch is spinning and it's in his favour? I don't know. Like, it might be that he's slightly lower usage and this is helping out, but it does. You look at this, and he's a defensive bowler. I think defensive bowlers, when they bowl early on, you can hit them for 5 and 6 runs and over, right? Without any trouble. Later on, when you're trying to get under them and hit sixes, that is when they get to another point in their bowling, because that's when they become very, very hard for you to get away. So there is an argument for Sunil Narine, Krunal Pandya, even Rashid Khan to bowl deeper in as defensive spinners rather than early on. And the interesting thing about that is if you go back, if you look at Ashwin and Chahal, Ashwin generally comes on first, right? And I'm not talking about the power play, although that is a separate issue. But I'm talking about those first couple of overs. And I think Akshar does it instead of Kuldeep. And I think now, the more I study this sort of stuff, the more I think you want your attacking spinner to bowl the 7th over for 2 reasons. One is that the 7th over generally doesn't go for as many runs, right? It's the second lowest yielding runs in a T20 game. And if you then get a defensive over out of your attacking bowler, your chances are they're going to have to attack a little bit more off your defensive bowler, which brings him back into the game. And now you've got 2 overs that have either probably gone for low runs, or you might have been able to force a wicket through that. From your defensive bowler, which gives him more confidence. And now you want wickets to come in T20 cricket earlier rather than later. All these things matter. Anyway, this graph just makes me think of all that. I might have made all that up and it might all be wrong. Krunal Pandya's true values by phase. He's obviously, remember, every time you see a spinner with great death bowling figures, that chances are it is at least in part because they don't bowl there unless the pitch is ragging. But to have a true economy of 2.7 runs better than everyone else and be able to have a true wickets of almost a wicket more, I think it's fair to say that if Krunal Pandya is bowling in the death, there is a very big chance he's going to take wickets and a very little chance anyone's going to hit him for any runs. And you can see the rest of the game, he's not as strong, right? His true economy is fine. This is 0 over here. So he's plus on true economy, but his true average is under par. Not massively under par, though. Like, what's that? Oh, okay. 12 to 16 is pretty bad, but in the power play and the other one, he's not too bad at all. Just minus 13 there. For a defensive bowler, absolutely no issue with that at all. With a nice little cherry on top that on the good days, you can use him at the end. I say that, and they didn't today, but... And this is Dhoni's true strike rate in the first 5 balls from 2020 to 2024. Do you see anything different here? It's a big, big change, isn't it? So, he's been really, really steady. I wonder if they've just told him to come in at the end. I feel like there's another year where he hits quite hard, but perhaps it was after the 5 ball mark, and there's another year it might have even been after the 10 ball mark. But this is, quite dramatic. Those first 2 balls he's getting his eye in, and then by the 3rd, 4th, and 5th he's going nuts. Obviously, some of this it's small sample size, although he hasn't played a lot yet. But it does feel to me that he's really trying to strike from first ball, which is not a normal MS Dhoni thing to do, as you can see here. This beautiful graphic by Varun as well. Great work. That's it for me on the scoreboard today. So let's get to your comments and everything else. We'll have a quick break here. And then after the break, I see we've got a couple of super chats and some other questions as well. So I'll add those to my list. But I'm Jared Kimber, and this is the scoreboard. Sometimes you just need to take the slips out and bowl defensively. And you also need to be careful with your computer's defense as well. If you need a VPN, go Nord. NordVPN.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months and gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. So put in some dot balls and turn them into maidens via NordVPN.com/Kimber. All right, welcome back. I've got some pretty interesting questions, actually. Although the first one is from ABCT. He says, thoughts on yesterday's crazy game. Oh, my God. What was the game yesterday, of which I watched all of, and now can't remember a single ball. This is what happens when I don't have to do a show. Actually, it's not what happens. It's just the way my brain works, sadly. What was yesterday's game? Why can't I find anything here? Okay, here we go. Oh, yeah, that was a Mumbai Punjab King game. Yeah, I think we saw a situation where I thought Mumbai played that pretty perfectly when they batted. They saw that the wicket was a little bit difficult, and they got themselves probably, 15 above par, I would say. All things considered, some of that was maybe helped by Punjab not doing particularly well. And would Mumbai have made more runs if they'd sent Tim David in and Ramare Shepherd in a little bit earlier? Like, the amount of times this year they've got the order wrong with when they send these players in and when they don't is phenomenal, really. Like, I mean, eventually, it's like the chimpanzees on the typewriters. You're going to get it right accidentally. So I thought they did fine there. The problem is that they were, 10 or 15 above par. So what does that make it? 10%? And their bowling is not 10% under par, is it? Their bowling is 18% under par, maybe. And so there was always a chance, but they got massively on top. But I never really, I sort of thought with Shashank and Ashutosh that well before anyone else did, that I thought there was still a chance, because that wicket just looked like it got a little bit easier to bat on at that point. And when they lost all those wickets early on, where were they? So when Bumrah got 2 and Kotsia got 2, right? And then you looked at the rest of the bowling at that point, and they bowled 4 overs. This is my memory anyway. They bowled 4 overs of those 2 guys, and you're like, well, who's going to bowl from here, right? And that's the point at where you go, they only need to only need to stay close here, and they can make Mumbai panic. And they did. I think it tells you how much Mumbai are struggling when it comes to bowling. There's another question about Mumbai in a moment, so I'll finish it up there. Box says, did matchup maximizing mentality? Whoa, that's very alliterative. Mess up things for CSK today. Sending Jadeja to play spin overs was not a good move, and Rizvi ahead of Moeen was bad too. Jadeja, I think, is probably more to do with the fact that they feel like they're a solid batter who can bat through the innings short, would be my guess. I don't think it was hunting matchups. Could be wrong, but it didn't feel like it was hunting matchups to me. We know that Jadeja doesn't score particularly fast against spin in that period. So you're not hunting a matchup at that point. It might have been right, left, etc., etc. But the way I was looking at it was not like that. The Rizvi one I thought was interesting because why would you send your impact sub in then rather than waiting to see what Moeen Ali could do, or even another pinch hitter could do, if you wanted to go that? It felt like to me that was an error of judgment, but they clearly knew that they were a lot short, and to be fair, by the end of the game, they were massively correct on that. So I'm not 100% sure it was matchup hunting. You know, we saw Simon Doole's comments the other way. Anytime a team makes a bad decision now, it's matchup hunting. Most of the times, teams still get matchups wrong. So I don't really. It's like it's just become a thing that we blame everything on. I just think that they felt they were a batter short, and that's what made them panic. And I would say that the Jadeja and Rizvi coming in was more about them feeling about a short than anything else. And as I said in the intro, I reckon for the last 2 games, maybe even the last 3 games, I've felt the exact same way. And they're not a batter short in depth of their batting, because obviously they can bat so far down, but they're a batter short in a top order player who is a banker, who is, you know, who brings all the other guys together. Sorry, my daughter's crying in the other room. Sayantan says, great foot marks on Klaasen. Thank you very much. I know he's retired from Test, but any chance he might be considered for Tests in India, Sri Lanka? It'd be interesting if you could have a chat with him. When he retired from Tests, I think we all kind of felt that it was coming. He'd been stuffed around a little bit. He hadn't made any runs in Tests. It would be a fascinating one. A better cricket call. I sort of imagine if Rob Key ran South African cricket, right? Rob Key would call him and go, look, we're going to India, we're going to Sri Lanka, you know, we're going to Pakistan, we're going to Bangladesh, wherever. Are you interested in coming over and seeing what you can do? Right? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But we think you're our best player of spin. You can put pressure back on the bowlers. Do you want to have a go? Is that a conversation worth having? Yes. The problem with so many of these boards is they are very black and white when it comes to this. He's either with us or against us. And it's like, do you remember the whole Dwayne Pretorius thing of, you know, they made him sign that contract. They said, you know, you've got to, if you're going to commit, we're going to give you all this. And then it's like, they never really played him all that much anyway. And these players, this is Heinrich Klaasen's peak. What else did those series clash against? And also, is this an itch? He's played Test cricket. Then it might be that he wants to, you know, have one go at, you know, being, at making runs. And he might think that this is something he can do. But he might just be like, look, it's too late. Mookie says, Rahul was superb today. Yeah, when he scores quick early on, it's a big difference, right? I still have that issue later on where it just didn't help with the net run rate. They were so far ahead of the game. Then Nicholas Perrin to come in next. I don't think you need to get yourself in that position. Although the general reason that they weren't already at a net run rate boost was probably more because Quinton de Kock kept getting stuck. But Rahul was seeing the ball so brilliant. There's a cut shot he plays off Partharana at the end. He hit that ball so hard. It was straight to the fielder. It was a single. He hit that ball so hard. It was just absolutely beautiful. Hunt says, being a Mumbai fan, can Bumrah carry us to the finals? I mean, I would say no. So the best way of doing this is, and it's not, we don't talk about it enough in cricket, but essentially you don't count wins, you count losses, right? You can have 6 losses in a season and still be a good chance of making it to the finals, right? So Mumbai have 4 losses already. So they would have to go, they would have to lose 2 of their next 7. So they have to go 5-2. So I would ask you at the moment, Hund, if you think this is a team that looks like it can go 5-2. Can Bumrah win 1 or 2 of those games? Yes, but let's have a look at the games quickly. One's against Rajasthan, one is against KKR, one's against Sunrisers, another one against KKR. So their last 3 games are Sunrisers, KKR. Start that again. Their last 4 games are KKR, Sunrisers, KKR, Lucknow. All of those teams should be, and they play Lucknow before. They've already played all the easy teams. They've got like a game against Delhi left. No, but just get down to it. Let's say they beat Rajasthan and they beat Delhi. And they lose to Lucknow. Or they win 2 of those and they lose 1. They still have to go pretty much 4-0 or 3-1 from all the other teams who are also playing for playoff spots and everything else. And let's have a look at the actual net run rate. Their net run rate it's better than Gujarat, but they're a long way behind Lucknow, and they're miles behind Sunrisers as well. And both those teams have a better record, so that can dip down a little bit. But yeah, no. Anil Above says, in a previous video, you highlighted a sudden massive decline in Rohit's strike rate between balls 40 and 50. This is exactly what happened in the Mumbai CSK game. What factors do you believe contribute to this dip? I would say that, remember, he probably hasn't faced a great amount of balls between 40 and 50. And so there is a chance that there is just general variance in that. Against CSK, what happened was two very important things. He got tired and the ball got soft. If you go back to that first innings against in CSK when Dhoni was hitting all those sixes at the end, they changed the ball and it was much harder. Suddenly he was whacking it everywhere. That's a lot easier to do. So I think that's a big part of it. But, it's now happened a bunch of times. We would have a similar kind of pattern. Is it fitness? Is it that he is, sometimes players get into weird sort of habits. So he is thinking, he's got all the way through that innings. He now thinks, okay, I'll just consolidate for a minute so I can get to the death and then I can hit a bunch of sixes because he's a brilliant 6 hitter. He still hit 6s at the end against CSK despite the fact he looked like he had, 0 energy left, right? And he still hit 6s, which tells you how it's almost muscle memory for him to be able to hit a 6. So there's a chance that as he gets towards the end of the inning, sometimes he thinks to himself, if I give myself, 5-10 balls here to recharge, I can then whack a bunch of 6s at the end and make a big difference. So it could be variance, it could be fitness, it could be that. Those are the 3 main reasons that I would be looking for. Nazal says, is the idea of not simultaneously playing 2 spinners who turn the ball in the same direction overemphasized? Bhuvi and Sandeep were similar bowlers who succeeded in the same team. Okay, so the difference between Bhuvi and Sandeep straight away is that at the end, they are similar bowlers, but they are similar bowlers as in really good. And they're both attacking bowlers. They're both defensive bowlers up front who can nip the ball around. So can actually attack, but generally probably both become defensive, I think, in that power play. And then at the end, they're very accurate, good death bowlers, right? There isn't really a natural matchup for that. Everyone goes good against right arm seam. So if you really want to take the matchup thing all the way through, you would never play matchup seam, right arm seam, unless the bowler was like Bumrah, right? You'd need to be a massive plus in order to be able to do it. But of course, that's not the case. The problem with having 2 spinners who turn the ball the same way is that it allows the opposition to stock up with one kind of batter, right? So if it's generally going to be 2 bowlers who spin the ball away from right-handers. So if the opposition has the ability to have multiple left-handers, then, left-handers are... So right-handers are far more even when it comes to how they go against the ball spinning away and the ball spinning in. They are better when it spins in than away, but there isn't a really wide variance. Left-handers, it is absolutely huge. Left-handers absolutely destroy the balls spinning into them, and they are absolutely terrible en masse against the balls spinning away, right? So If you are going into the game with a left arm finger spinner and a wrist spinner, and there are 2 or 3 left-handers in the other team, and maybe they bring in an extra one thinking that you're going to do that, you're now in a situation where it's very hard for you to bowl your 2 bowlers at the same time. Where this gets interesting, of course, is Harpreet Brar, all right, or Mitchell Santner. I'm trying to think of others. There's others as well who are actually really good against left and right-handers. And this is matchup isn't the problem. It's how it is used that is a problem. Harpreet Brar does really well against left-handers. Why is he not bowling his extra over sometimes when there's a left-hander at the crease? That doesn't make any sense. And so if you have a bowler like Harpreet Brar, who is really good against them, as long as you don't have peak Moeen Ali or peak Chris Gale or peak Ben Dunk out there, right? Someone who absolutely murders it, probably the left-arm finger spinner is going to hold their own okay. So again, it goes into that sort of thing. But it also depends on when you can bowl those bowlers. So if you do have 2 bowlers who spin the ball in the same direction, if they can't be used throughout the inning, so you want at least one of them to bowl 1 over in the power play and at least one of them to bowl 1 over at the death, if they have to be used mostly between overs 7 and 14, you have no flexibility. So what you're really trying to stop as a team is for the other team to game for you. Right? So when I was with St. Lucia, we had about 3 or 4 players who really struggled against wrist spin. And so the other team could put us in a position where they could pick a second wrist spinner and we would really struggle. Where the way that we got around that was when David Warner went to number 4, you couldn't bowl right arm wrist spin to him at that stage, because he was so good against it. And so you had to have a great leg spinner, so Rashid Khan could still bowl. But anyone who wasn't Rashid Khan or Imran Tahir was really going to struggle bowling wrist spin against David Warner in the middle overs, right? And so that is how these things get counted, right? And that's what you have to do as a team. You don't want to be a team that is easy to game plan against, because you can have a better 11 than the opposition, but the opposition keep minimizing your effectiveness. And that's how cricket is played. So to go back to your point about seam, right arm seam almost needs to be taken out of your thought process at a certain point, because every single player in cricket has a positive, or virtually 99% of professional batters have a positive record against right arm seam. So if you really went to the matchups, you would never play right arm seam. That's how crazy it is, right? But the difference is it's about the role definition and how those players can be used, right? The other thing is form. If you had Krunal Pandya and Chahal, or maybe that's not right. If you had Harpreet Brar and Rashid Khan in the same side, right? They're both at their maximum form, and you know that they can both do stuff against left-handers and against right-handers. You can have 2 leg spinners in the same side, because they can bowl in different parts of the game and be effective in different ways. So you're already stretching that out. But also, if they're both in form, then it doesn't matter. And if they're both in form, you could probably have Krunal, Pandya, and Chahal together. But if one of them loses form, it becomes a shit show very fast. That is not quite the same case for Bhuvi and Sandeep. The problem with having Bhuvi and Sandeep together is that at their peak, they were both really good new ball bowlers, and that allows the opposition to basically know what your first 4 or 5 overs are. And also, it doesn't allow you any flexibility again. So you can be slightly gamed against by that as well. But if the ball's moving and they're in form, it doesn't matter if you know that's coming, right? If the pitch is spinning and you've got Harpreet bowling brilliantly and Rashid Khan bowling brilliantly, it doesn't matter that they're spinning the ball in the same direction. But you have to also remember that your players won't always be in form, and that you need a level of flexibility throughout. And so if you look at the Gujarat, I remember the Hobart Hurricanes did this one year, and I just said to them when they asked me for my advice, I said, I can tell you who you're going to use next. So if I know it, the batters are going to know it, which means if they get 8 off this over, the next over, they know they can get 16 because they know who's going to be bowling and they know what the matchup is going to be. So they don't have to take a risk off the over to get more runs beforehand because they know exactly what's going to be coming. That is kind of the advanced stuff that we're talking about. And it's not easy. None of this is particularly easy. And the game changes so violently and, dramatically all the way through, right? It's not that it stays the same way all the way. So you have to be aware of all that sort of stuff as well. Anyway, I think Arjun says, why don't teams bowl spinners to at the death to Dhoni? I think Krunal Pandya should have bowled today at the death. I think we showed it. He had the good numbers. This is from Twitter as well. Thanks, Arjun. I think he had the good numbers and he's comfortable bowling at the death. I thought that was a pitch that kind of should have helped spin more in the first innings than the second inning. So I would have probably gone with an over of spin. The problem with the over of spin with the spinners is you don't really want it to be the 20th because that is a bit of a free swing. But 19th, 18th, I think would have made a little bit more sense. I can't remember if Dhoni came in actually for the 18th. He might have been there for the 19th. But we've seen that before, right? I've seen that used against players. Usually, unless they're just bad against spin, I don't think Dhoni's bad against spin. They usually still find a way to score. But a good a good bowler who's confident, the ball's coming out well, that's the time to do it, I would have thought. Anyway, that's me done. We will see you again tomorrow. And then on Sunday, we'll be doing a live stream at Cricket 8, and then we'll be doing this show. The live stream is going to be myself, Rob Barron, of course, who was frantically worried about how many sixes Nicholas Piran might hit in this game today. And Daniel Norcross is joining us as well. Anyway, we will see you again very soon. I'm Jared Kimber. This is the Scoreboard. Subscribe, like, tell your mother, all these things. Thanks to the kind folks at FlexiSpot for looking after my office and my butt by sending me their E7 Pro desk that save your favorite desk heights at a touch of a button. You don't have to crank anything. This thing just finds the height that you like and you can work. And their BS12 Pro chair that supports my posterior while I'm recording, this ad and all my shows. If you need great desks, especially ones that change heights or the best quality chairs, head on over to FlexiSpot today.